Hi everybody, this is Judy at Judy in the Kitchen. We've been talking about salt lately, and in today's video I have a list of specific tips and ideas for helping you to be able to reduce the salt in your diet. This list is very long, so I broke it up into 4 parts. This is the longest list out of any video series I've had. 4 parts. This is part 1. I will have links to the other parts below in the description box as they become released, okay? They're not going to all be released on the same day, but eventually do make sure that you check them all out so that you can get the whole list, especially if you're addicted to salt and you want to reduce that salt intake because you're having some health issues as a result of a high salt diet. Okay, first tip. Take the salt shaker off the table. Now we do know that the added salt from the salt shaker is not the biggest source of salt in most people's diet, but it's a good starting point. So if you find the food on your plate needs more flavor, try to add more herbs or spices that were used in the preparation of that food rather than salt. That can help to do it. Also, it just takes time to get used to having less salt in your diet. Allow yourself time to get used to it. Food may not taste the same at first. Just allow yourself time. Take the salt shaker off the table. Here's another tip. Celery naturally does contain some sodium, and it does have a somewhat salty flavor. So you can use celery in food preparation instead of salt, and it'll add some bit of a saltiness to it without adding refined salt. Now you're thinking, why replace salt with salt here? The sodium in celery is not isolated and refined. It's naturally occurring. It is combined with a lot of minerals associated with it in the celery itself. So it does not have the detrimental effects that refined salt would have on your body. So that doesn't mean you need to gorge on celery, but it can help to replace that saltiness flavor in some foods. Try it sometime, you'll see what I mean. Another tip for you is to be aware of the amount of sodium that you're eating. Of course, we're not going to have exact numbers on this, but check out your foods and be aware of where your sodium is coming from and roughly how much sodium that you're eating. This is especially helpful if you're eating a lot of processed foods, packaged foods with nutrition facts labels on there. Check the labels and make a note. Write it down for the day, how much sodium you're actually eating and how much sodium is in one serving. And then throughout the day, remember to keep adding in the amount of sodium that you take in. And if you're eating salt, you'll need to convert that to sodium because salt contains sodium, but it's not 100%. It's only about 40% sodium. So we need to use a conversion table that we can find online, whatever. Keep a tally of roughly how much sodium you're getting in a day. The results may surprise you, and remember that we only need about 500 milligrams of naturally occurring sodium in foods like fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, meats, even some milk products without having any added salt whatsoever. Strive to eat more whole, fresh, unprocessed foods. Such foods, like I just said, will have naturally occurring sodium in them, and they'll actually have an ideal amount for your body where you can get by without adding any added salt to your foods. When in doubt, use Chronometer.com. This is a free online resource, piece of software that you can use to calculate how much sodium you're ingesting in the foods that you are eating. So it's a great tracking tool for you to use, and it's free. If you opt to add salt to food while you're cooking or at the table, try to estimate how much you add, and include that in your end of day tally that you're keeping up with your sodium intake. Awareness is important. So if you know where your sodium is coming from, you'll know what you need to reduce. And again, you can use Chronometer to help you out on that one. Another important point is when you're cooking your own foods, strive to season them without added salt or using as little added salt as possible. Herbs and spices, lemon or lime juices, salt-free seasonings, onion, garlic, ginger, they're all good ways to bring flavor to your food without adding salt. And if you get used to using these foods, items, these seasonings, eventually you'll reduce your craving for added salt and your taste buds will become more acute. You'll learn how to appreciate the flavors of your foods without that salt interfering with that. If you enjoy processed foods and you just really don't want to part with them, okay, that's your choice. But try to reduce the portion size and complement that meal with some added fresh or frozen foods without any added salt. Maybe have a side salad or maybe cook some vegetables that don't have any added salt in them. And that way you'll be full at the end of your meal. Maybe top it off with a piece of fresh fruit, something like that. And that way you'll start gradually reducing your salt intake without feeling like you're deprived or something like that. Roughly 75% of the sodium that Americans consume comes from processed, prepackaged, and restaurant foods, not from the salt shaker at the table. Cutting back on those foods and preparing your own meals will very likely reduce your sodium intake, unless you go wild with the salt shaker at the table. And that's asking a lot for a lot of people because they're so accustomed to having their restaurant fare or their packaged food that they just stick in the oven or the microwave and it's ready to eat. But sometimes it's good to improve our life skills a little bit and learn how to cook something without added salt to it. Think about what you ingest on a regular basis and see what steps you can take to move forward to slowly reduce your salt intake over time. I do hope this helps you out. Stay tuned for part 2. Bye for now.